Hi everyone, it's Guillaume from Startup Basecamp. Welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. During the show, you will have the opportunity to meet the best climate tech founders, investors, and experts from both Silicon Valley and around the globe. They will share with you their stories and personal journeys into this growing and exciting industry, giving you some insight into the ecosystems that help you to take part in the fight against climate change and benefit from the opportunities it can represent. The podcast is divided in two small interviews. So in the first part, you will get to know our speakers, their perspectives on the climate crisis and how climate tech is changing the game. The second part of the discussion will be for members of our community who will learn the speakers' secret sauce on how to and share with you their unique expertise on topics such as fundraising, management, strategy, and so on, to help you to become a better leader in your field. So before we start, I would like to quickly share what we are doing at Startup Basecamp to support climate tech founders in accessing resources and gaining visibility with investors they seek. Our initiatives include a membership-based community platform offering access to a dedicated Slack group with a growing number of founders, experts, and investors from around the world, and a series of exclusive content such as interviews, weekly job listings, events, and our quarterly online pitch night opportunity. But more than a place where you can learn, exchange, and grow, we are building a matchmaking service to facilitate connections between our members and top investors and experts in the field. And soon, alongside with other top investors, we will be launching a small fund to co-invest in the growth and acceleration of our members. Finally, all of this is possible because of your support and donations. We are a small self-funded team and we want you to be part of this collective movement against climate change. So please share one episode with a friend and subscribe to the channels. As an added bonus, we will plant a tree for each of our subscribers each time we reach 1,000 new fans or donors. Do not hesitate to connect with me via social media or email guillaume@startupbasecamp. Thanks a lot for listening. I hope to get in touch with you soon. And now, let's go for the show. Hi everyone, to celebrate our episode number 30, we are speaking with Pippa Gawley, founder and director at Zero Carbon Capital. The fund, based in the UK, invests in early stage companies that are on a mission to fix climate change through deep science innovation. So if you are an awesome team with breakthrough ideas that could be scaled to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by half of a gigaton per year, get in touch with them as they could be your future partner for growth. I was super excited to have Pippa on the show, who is an incredible woman, a mother, an investor supporting early stage climate tech founders, and who has been motivated since her early days to try to make the world a better place. During this episode, you will learn more about her unique story that began by working in finance, then for eBay in the UK, and her move to Silicon Valley with her family. And it was there that she started to angel invest in early stage companies which fight climate change through scientific innovation prior to launching Zero Carbon Capital back in Europe. Pippa will share an overview of the climate tech ecosystem today, where we are at, and what needs to happen to ensure the climate tech ecosystem can fully support the 2050 net zero goal. During the show with her, she will cover in detail how they select and support founders and how they measure the impact that they base their investment decisions on. Then she will highlight underdog areas in climate tech in which she sees exciting potential for investments and growth. Finally, Pippa will share her view on the important role women can play in the climate tech ecosystem and how you can get involved in the growing climate tech movement today. In the second part of the show, Pippa will give her secret sauce for founders seeking to fundraise and pitch investors successfully. Then Pippa will cover how she tackled challenges to maintain a healthy work-life balance as a mother, founder, and an investor. Pippa, welcome to the show. Hi Pippa, welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. We are super honored and excited to have you here with us today as you are part of this growing number of incredible women fighting climate change.
Hi, Guillaume, and thank you for inviting me onto the podcast. It's really great to be here.
Thank you so much. So before we start, as usual, could you please give us a 30-second introduction about Zero Carbon Capital?
Yes, so Zero Carbon Capital is an early stage investor supporting hard tech companies that are on a mission to solve climate change with technology innovation.
So let's start from the top. Can you tell us a bit more about your personal story and background? As I
Mhm.
say during the show, we like to put the human back into the center of the interview. So what are you passionate about? What do you do besides work and being a
Yeah,
successful investor? What makes you feel inspired or like your best self? I mean, who is Pippa?
yeah. It's going straight in at the deep end there. So, I've always been really motivated by trying to make the world a better place and trying to help other people. And I think, when I was younger, I was very passionate about poverty alleviation and, yeah, the inequalities you see in the world. And I think, as I've got older, I've got more and more focused in on climate change being the thing that is going to disproportionately impact all of those other things that I care about. So, fixing that is the highest priority, because it's going to make everything else so much worse.
So
So that's a bit of a heavy answer in terms of other things that I enjoy. We have two relatively young children. Love hanging out with them. They make the world a better place themselves, and inspire me to try and do better every day. And I love being outside. So we do a lot of hiking and sailing, and mucking around. We live near the water, so we're lucky to spend a lot of time mucking around on the water, and hanging out with friends.
fantastic. So, in terms of the different, work and life experience prior Zero Carbon Capital, I mean, what did you learn during that journey that gave you,
Mm,
in a way, an edge to launch the
yeah.
firm?
Yeah, so my I think if anybody looked at my CV, there's not an obvious straight line, and I think I like to talk about that because I think people who are starting out on their career kind of think like it is going to be kind of straight up to the top right, and it's it rarely is. I think it's often quite a zigzaggy path, and it's a lifelong journey to try and understand more about you and what you're passionate about and what you're good at, and kind of narrowing in on that thing that you really want to do, and then it might change again. So I think we shouldn't kind of have those expectations for ourselves. So I started off by studying engineering, and I went into financial services after that. Then worked in internet technology, like product design for a while, working with some really awesome human-centered design specialists. And so my job there was really kind of distilling what we learn about people into business insights, and product recommendations for the websites. I did that for an agency that I ran, and then worked for eBay doing that, set up a team kind of to give those insights to the business. Um, and then we moved to California with my husband's job, when I was on maternity leave, and I ended up spending a few years while the kids were little, just kind of focusing on them. And when I was kind of ready to kind of engage my kind of professional self again, I kind of looked around at what I could do, and was really keen to make sure that I didn't compromise on that desire to do something about climate change. Um, and was trying to work out what I could do that would have the biggest impact, and kind of took stock and said, right, okay, I've got a technical brain. I have some scientific knowledge, and I've for the last 10 years had jobs where I was managing people, then understanding how people work, kind of having those insights, um, and really working as an analyst, so taking insights from specialists, from kind of technical scientific people, and turning them into business insights. And because I was mulling over what can I do with these skills, and was really drawn to the decarbonisation technology side, so solving the problem of climate change through technology innovation. And still, it didn't quite click. And we were living in Palo Alto. It's kind of a side part of this joke where there are VCs on every street corner, and it's basically investing in companies is in the water. And I still didn't quite click. And then finally one day my husband said to me, like, why don't you try angel investing in these early stage companies and get involved in them and help them as a mentor. And it still felt like something completely alien to me, but I kind of checked it out and went on a few courses about impact investing and realized that this was that thing that I was looking for, that brought together all of the skills I had, and would enable me to have the impact I wanted to have on the world. So decided that investing in early stage companies that were trying to solve climate change with scientific innovation, and it is perfect for me. I absolutely love it. It means I get to hang out with really smart young scientists who are coming up with great ideas, and creating that innovation pipeline that we will need to get to net zero. I get to try and help them. And for me, I'm quite a generalist. I like looking very broadly at a scenario. So for me to get to delve into the technology side and the IP protection and the legal agreements and the human issues and the financials, and then to try and make that all into a do we invest in this company kind of decision. I think it is something that really appeals to me because there's so many different things to look at and try and bring together.
That's exciting. And can you maybe, I mean, you mentioned at the beginning of the interview, make the world a better place. Now you described this fantastic journey in Palo Alto and prior to that in the UK, and starting to get involved into the climate tech, I would say, ecosystem. But do you have any specific aha moment that you can recall or would define as such that really was in a way the driver for you to jump into the climate tech industry? Or is this really this succession of events and experiences?
Yeah, and I think the aha moment for me, as many people I think of my generation, was An Inconvenient Truth, the Al Gore film. So I think before that, climate change was something I was aware of and I thought it was a problem, but I think that was just such a slap in the face to say, the size of the problem, and that it was unequivocally coming from human action, and how rapidly it was going to get worse and what the impacts would be, and that was really that, this is what I have. This is, I often say this, the problem of our generation to solve. Right, we can't let this go unchecked.
Yeah, definitely, and I think COP26 is even a big reminder for all of us that it's not only about the politics, but we all need as private citizens and business leaders to take the leap. So let's take a zoom out here a little bit, and I'd like to go with you a little bit and get your understanding of the climate tech ecosystem today. If you could, tell us a little bit, where are we at in terms of maturity in the ecosystem? I mean, what needs to happen to have the climate tech ecosystem being, in a way, mature enough to support the deployment of those new, emerging, or existing tech at scale with this target of, the net zero goal of 2050? Maybe you can give us a little bit like this overview on the UK landscape and European level, or larger. Up to you.
Yeah, so I started investing in the US, and when I came back to the UK, I found that there were definitely some things which are more developed in the UK. For example, the government policies, and to a certain level, the kind of consumer awareness and acceptance. But the VC ecosystem and the climate investing ecosystem more broadly was definitely more developed in America. We were in California, which is kind of not really America. So it was very progressive in terms of incubators, accelerators, and smart money going into the fundamental problems. And don't get me wrong, I mean, there's plenty of subpar startups out there, as there are everywhere. I think this is one of the issues with climate change, is there's a lot of well-meaning people going into it who want to start a company, and somewhere along the line their ambitions get kind of squashed down a bit, and they end up doing something that is going to improve the efficiency of something a little bit, or it's like it's a nice to have, and it's kind of maybe it's part of a solution to a small part of it, and they lose the kind of big vision of like, right, we've got to hit the big stuff, and we've got to be solving the fundamental problems, and the rest of it is kind of nice to have. So I think too many companies lose that focus. And I think there are some investors who think, well, or some people in general who think, well, shouldn't we just do all of it, all of the above? And it's like, well, yes, if there are no regrets things we can do, and they're not taking resources away from bigger parts of the solution, then absolutely let's do them all. But the problem is that often they do take resources away from more fundamental problems, and whether that's in the attention of a consumer, that I think, right, well, I've stopped using plastic straws now, so I don't need to worry about anything else, or it's I've gone vegan. That means the rest of it, that's it. If that's taking all of my energy, that I have to kind of address this problem, and you're not attacking the biggest things in your life that you're doing about climate change. And the same thing is true at a company level and a government level. You can get distracted and end up not putting resources in the best place. So I think we need to keep that focus.
So let's go into the specific of zero carbon capital. Can you let us know a little bit more about it? I mean, you mentioned already the story a little bit and what led you to start at, but if you can cover a little bit deeper, like really how did it start and with who did you start it, and how did you start this? What is the thesis that you put together to start investing?
Yeah, so I started investing, as I said, as an angel investor in the US, and kind of learned fairly gradually, working alongside other investors who had more experience. So with other angel investors, angel groups, and then kind of small funds, and then learning from people in the ecosystem. Like there were some amazing resources in the Bay Area, like the Cyclotron Road or Activate program at Berkeley. So there were lots of kind of accelerators and groups which were really finding and supporting like really phenomenal startups. And when I came back to the UK, as I mentioned, it was kind of struggled to find the same sort of thinking. And the underlying thesis is really around like focusing on hard technologies, because there is a gap there. Most VCs have got burnt by the first clean tech bubble and have kind of been learning over the last 30 years to focus on software, and they've kind of forgotten about how to invest in other things, which is curious, because VC started off by investing in hard things, and we have all of these amazing companies like Marconi and Intel, and we look at the world around us and it's all full of big hard things, and now we think like software is going to solve everything. And it's like, I'm not diminishing the role that software or AI or SaaS can play, because there are some very important tools that we can get from that skill, from that set. But like to think that we're going to fix climate change completely with software is insane. So I don't really understand the VCs who are going out there saying, right, we want to solve the big problems of mankind just using AI. I mean, we clearly need more physical innovation as well. So we're focusing on that as our thesis, to say, right, hard tech, and we're looking for things which are going to have a big carbon emission impact. So we use the sort of 0.5 gigaton a year filter, which is sort of similar to like Breakthrough and some other big climate tech investors. And just to kind of drill down on that a little bit, we're not saying that every company we invest in is going to abate 0.5 gigaton of carbon emissions. Clearly not, because if that was true, we'd pretty much have fixed it by now with just our portfolio. I mean, it's like saying you're looking for companies that will be unicorns, right? So you're looking for them to have that potential. So we're looking for companies that are addressing a kind of a wedge of carbon emissions that is 0.5 gigaton, and that they plausibly could get rid of it using their technology. Now, many things might happen. There may be competitors, or there might be different technologies that achieve the same goal. and that mean that they don't end up being that technology. But if everything goes well, and if they manage to achieve their goals and their milestones, then they would be, they would have a plausible bet to be like the dominant technology in this area that achieves that reduction of carbon emissions. So, go on. Oh, sorry, you had a question.
No, go for it, please.
And there's a couple of important things there that we kind of then have to refine and say, right, we're only counting emissions where your technology is likely to be the one that a customer would pick. So whether that's like you have a hope of being the cheapest or the best or the fastest or the one that's most preferred by the regulatory framework. So, because otherwise, again, it's not plausible that you're going to get a big chunk of that market. And that you have some kind of defendable advantage. So on the whole, for us, that's going to be technology, like either IP or know-how or something along those lines. So, you have to have those two things. And we think that goes hand in hand with being a profitable company. That if you're going to build a big important company that will address this wedge of carbon emissions, it's going to be a valuable company as well. So we look at the techno-economic analysis and financial forecasting, but on the whole, those two things should go hand in hand. That's our thesis. And then we're looking for the team that we think can get the technology to that scale. So, looking for those awesome founders with that big vision, big ambition, and the necessary skills to get the technology there. And again, it might not be that the founding team takes the technology the whole way, but in that case, we're looking for founders that, ideally can grow with the company, and if not, are going to have the humility to know when the right time is to work with other people to deliver that vision.
Okay, so maybe this is a good segue to understand a bit better a part of your portfolio. If you can give us like maybe one or two examples of one of the previous investment that you guys did, and in a way, like what make them special? How did you find them, or how do you source in a way your deal, and what do you offer to those founders coming to pitch you, and then when you decide to invest with, in those teams?
So I'll give an example that I often talk about, which is a company in the US called Lilac Solutions. So I invested in them as an angel investor. I found them at a pitch event, a conference called Verge, which is about the energy transition in California. They're one of the companies pitching, and they just totally head and shoulders above everybody else. Like the quality of the entrepreneur was really apparent, and it's kind of really a model for the sort of company we like to invest in. And that the guy whose PhD the company was based upon became the CEO. So he was the technology brains and the CEO of the company, and he was so passionate about what he was doing. It was just very exciting and energizing to listen to him. And they had this insight, which was that we've got enough lithium for now, but if we're going to have all these EVs and all this other battery storage, we're going to need a lot more lithium, and there's going to become a crunch point in a few years' time where the supply of battery grade lithium is going to be the bottleneck for scaling EVs, and moreover, it's going to become the next gasoline. So it's going to be a national security issue if we're getting all of our lithium from Chile and Argentina, which we were at the time, from these very high lithium concentration brine resources, and it took 2 years, best part of 2 years, to get the lithium out of the brine through evaporation, in a process that was very environmentally unfriendly and obviously very costly. So they'd developed a better method using ion exchange beads, resin, that took half a day, was cleaner, cheaper, less energy, just better all around, and worked with much lower concentration lithium brine resources, which means that you're unlocking resources across the US and across the rest of the world. So it's strategically important as well as logistically important. So it kind of ticks all our boxes in terms of novel technology, defendable IP, will enable a very important part of the zero carbon transition in the electrification of transport. and a founder that seemed to us like, had the necessary capacity to grow with the company and take it all the way. And we invested in their pre-seed round 4 years ago, and they've just closed a Series B, $150 million Series B, which is like pretty phenomenally massive Series B. But the really cool thing about that journey is that the pre-seed was angels, the seed was climate tech funds. The Series A was bigger climate tech funds, like Breakthrough and Lower Carbon. And then the Series B is a pure financial investor, T. Rowe Price, who's one of the biggest fiduciary investors in the US, pension funds and institutional capital at its finest. And for that, it seems now to me like that's such a great playbook for how climate tech is coming of age, that it is now interesting to pure financial investors once the technology has been sufficiently de-risked. So I think that's a really important part of that journey as well. And I'd love to give some examples from our UK portfolio as well, if we've got time.
Yeah, please go for it, and like
Yeah.
also to understand a little bit more after that is like, how do you support those founders? I mean, you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation that your experience help us to grow and to manage like all the different parts and hats that they need to carry at the beginning of as an early stage. So I think it's also very important for other founders listening to the show to understand. With Pippa, I know that I can do A, B, and C, and she's gonna help us or for us on that side.
Yeah, so we try and help all the founders that we have contact with. Sometimes we just don't have the bandwidth, and we have to be a little bit firm about saying like, no, sorry, this just isn't for us. But we always try and signpost people across to other investors that we think could be a better fit for them, or kind of tell them why it's not for us, so they can address it if they think that's if that's important to them. So the companies that we are investing in, we have taken board seats in the kind of earlier stage companies, generally with the kind of slightly later stage companies, more like the seed or late seed. We will often work with other investors, and then we'll kind of work out who's best placed to represent that company. So maybe it might be us, to represent the investor interest in that company. So it might be us, or it might be one of the other investors. And if that's somebody we trust, then we're not precious about that. We'll work with them. So when we're dealing with very early stage companies, often they've not had investors before. They don't know how to talk to investors. They might have a problem kind of trusting somebody from the outside coming in, and all of the kind of governance aspects around like how do you operate a company, how do you have board meetings, how do you send out investor newsletters, kind of just what do we do now? How aggressively do we try and expand and grow, or like should we be more cautious, or all of these kind of fundamental questions around the early months of the company. That's what we are, what we've been building up experience in, and what we want to try and help the company with. Ultimately the biggest value add we're going to have for a company is helping them on their journey. So helping them get that next round of funding in is so critical to get the right partner so that they're aligned, going off on their journey, whichever direction is best for them in the technology. But finding that investor with them and really working hard to have those relationships in place, and have a kind of good view of the ecosystem of what the possible options are, and helping the companies to kind of land that next investor, and then kind of passing the baton on to the investors who specialize more in supporting a company at Series A stage.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing all of that. In terms of the sectors, which are the most promising for you today in terms of like what I call ICR? So I mentioned to you impact cash return, meaning building impactful companies while creating highly profitable business. Do you see any underdogs, subsectors, area that you are the most excited about?
Yeah, it's a great question, because climate tech, is definitely having its moment in the sun, and there's a lot of interest, a lot of new funds, a lot of cash piling in. Most of it's kind of later stage, which is great in itself, because that is a critical kind of signal for earlier stage investors to get involved, to know that there are later stage investors and exits, there happening, right? So that's great. But in terms of sectors, there are some areas which are really hot at the moment. So like direct air capture of carbon, is one. So the last few companies we've spoken to in that area, like there hasn't been room in the round for us, and there were big investors getting earlier and earlier and earlier because they're so keen to get into like direct air capture technologies, and it ends up being a bit of a bun fight. So in that sort of situation, on the whole, we're just going to kind of pull back and say, right, we're not adding any value there. If we're up against whatever Breakthrough Energy and they're bidding for a place in this round, that's fine. They should take that, and we'll go off and focus on something that we think is maybe the next opportunity area. So maybe it's going even earlier, and we have invested in a really awesome direct air capture company at incorporation stage. So very as early as you could get, really. And again, there might be investors who aren't willing to take that level of risk. So we think that's something we can help with. So it might be going earlier, or it might be going to different geographies. So with our new fund, we're planning to expand, and there are certainly expand across Europe, and there are certainly some countries where the VC scene is not as developed as others. And so, we might be again able to support a company coming out of one of those countries where they don't have so many funding options, but they do have what we think is a great opportunity. So new countries, so going earlier, new geographies, and then kind of the sectors where the rest of the market hasn't quite kind of woken up to the need in a space. So an example I often give here is grid hardware. So like we see so many companies who are building AI digital twin simulations of, how to control the smart grid, and they understand the issue that we now have, millions of points of generation on the grid. A lot of them are intermittent. And then we have these huge loads coming onto the grid, like we have, air source heat pumps, electric vehicles. So the nature of supply and demand to the grid has fundamentally changed. It's going to keep changing, and it's obvious that we need more capacity. We're going to need probably at least 3 times the amount of capacity on the grid to electrify everything. So now, how do we do that? It's not AI is going to be great, but it's not the whole answer. So what are the smart ways in which we can upgrade what we've got to make the most out of it and kind of equip it for that smart and resilient grid of the future? So we've invested in a really fantastic company called Ionate, who are developing a drop-in replacement for grid transformers that enable dynamic variation of power and voltage control, and correction of power harmonics and reactive power. So they're going to enable that kind of smart routing of electricity, and clean up the signal so that you get more out of the power lines, so increasing the capacity and giving the control that we need. And it's just not as sexy, is it, talking about great big hunks of metal as it is talking about direct air capture. It's sometimes going to be a bit harder work to get them off to the races, and get the customers over the line. And that's the kind of opportunity that we might be looking for. And in terms of where we think there's still that white space is where we need more technology innovation. So grid scale energy storage is a big one. We still don't have anything better than pumped hydro, which is crazy. There's a lot of really interesting technologies out there. A lot of people trying out things like gravity or compressed air, or flow batteries. Lots of different things going on. So no clear winners yet, and there might be again different energy storage solutions that are suitable for different applications and geographies. So it might be a case that it becomes quite a decentralized market. So we think that's a really interesting space. Direct air capture, we've already talked about. We're gonna need more, and we need it to be cheaper. So we still see opportunity there. What else? So hydrogen. So getting the cost of green hydrogen down. Again, that's becoming quite a hot space, but we think there's still opportunity there at the early stage. Food and agriculture is a huge one, or kind of land use more broadly. Like, how do we get carbon back into the soil? How do we solve the methane emissions from livestock? How do we control the way that we produce and use fertilizer to reduce the emissions from that sector? So there's a lot of innovation again happening in that space at the moment, and lots of possible solutions like cultivated meat or biological fertilizers. So that's a space we're watching really closely. So there's there are a lot of sectors where we think we still need a lot of innovation to get to net zero. And there's still space in electrification of transport. We're not going to stop investing in lithium battery innovations if we think they genuinely can make batteries cheaper and faster and better. That's definitely a multiple shots on goal because it's so important.
Thank you so much for sharing all of those very interesting and exciting insights. I think there's, as you mentioned, there's still like a lot of area where there is a lot of investment and innovation to do and to allocate. That's for sure. So. We all know, and especially more like coming from the corporate world, there is a lot of like what we call greenwashing right now. And even you mentioned that as well at the beginning of the show, like those venture capital firms jumping into the climate tech. Why? Because maybe it's cool, maybe there's opportunities, maybe it's something that they really believe in. But there is always this difficult part of it. It's like the how do you measure impact? And you mentioned that you are using this framework like Gigaton as Breakthrough Energy Ventures using. But do you have any? Can you tell us a bit more about like the process or the framework that you use? I mean, do you rely on scientists, experts to validate the tech and the impact, or do you have any criteria in terms of CO2? You mentioned the gigaton threshold.
Yeah.
Maybe social impact. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so as mentioned, we focus on this half gigaton scale potential, or carbon TAM, as we call it. And we start off when we're looking at a list of companies at a pitch event. We'll start off by thinking about it in terms of are they genuinely addressing an area that is approximately 1% of global emissions right now? So if they're not, then it's just that they're not even making it through the filter. And sometimes it's worth having a conversation about that because it might be that they've got a platform technology that could be used in more areas than the beachhead market in a way that's not instantly obvious. So that's a kind of rough rule of thumb that we're looking at, and then we kind of apply those kind of sense checks of like, well, and is this likely to be like the chosen technology on grounds of performance or cost or regulatory pressure, and do we think it's defendable if it is? Or are there going to be a million companies doing this? So then we'd go into a more detailed look at the carbon emissions reduction potential. So our first pass is that we use a tool called Crane, CRANE, as cranetool.org. And that was developed by an investor in the US, the Prime Coalition, that we learn a lot from investing alongside as angel investors. And they've worked with a number of other investors and kind of independent research institutes like the Rocky Mountain Institute to develop this tool, the Crane tool, which is open source, anybody can use it. And it's the only tool I'm aware of that's really designed to evaluate the future impact of technology innovations. So it's perfect for what we're doing. So we look at that, and it has hundreds of different scenarios of like different templates that you can use to say, right, let's say we've got something that is going to replace plastic, this particular kind of plastic feedstock. So we can look at the scenario they've got there, and they've got template data, and we can tweak it to look at different geographies, or to say, right, well, what if we think it could accelerate it by 10% or 20%, or we can kind of play around with it and get comfortable with how big we think the opportunity is, and then we go on to do more detailed analysis and like get data from other sources. There's lots of great data out there on the internet from publicly available sources like the IEA or the Good Food Institute for the food and ag side, or lots of great resources where we can kind of triangulate and sense check what we've found, and ultimately build our own spreadsheet to say, right, yeah, we think this adds up, and we think the opportunity is there. And we generally would involve the entrepreneur in that because they're the best insight about the life cycle analysis of what they're doing, and if they think we're kind of judging them fairly or not. And then we put that as part of our due diligence report, and we work with a fund manager to to administrate our fund. And so ultimately we have to convince them that the technology does meet that half gigaton threshold, because that's what we've said in our information memorandum. That's our promise to our investors. So to our LPs, if you like. So if we're not ticking that box, then our fund manager won't let us invest in somebody. So we can't, pull the wool over anybody's eyes or just say, oh, I really love this team, let's just kind of squeeze this one in, even though I think that what they're doing is not going to have the impact we're looking for. So they keep us honest, and we're very so I work with I should have mentioned this previously when we were talking about how we kind of on the journey here. So when I decided to set up the fund when we came to the UK and saw the need for it, and wanted to scale the impact, I started working with my husband at that point. He's my business partner in the fund. And he brought some really great skills to the fund, and is possibly even more analytical than me. And I think we really keep each other, keep our feet on the ground in terms of the opportunities, and really hold each other accountable to that first principles thinking of like, is this really solving a fundamental problem, or is it kind of a technology just looking for a solution? Or does it just sound good, but it's not really going to have that impact, So he's the one who focuses on the carbon emissions. And sure, we would get external experts involved if we needed that. We haven't felt like we needed that yet, but we do work with scientific specialists to help us with the technical due diligence in areas where we don't feel so confident. For example, the biotech side. So that's the sum of our answer, is that we use a number of different tools to help us get comfortable around that half gigaton figure. We do look at social impact as well, in that we do then a kind of screen against all of the SDG indicators, and we look for anything where we think there's potentially a big negative impact. So we make sure that we're not, inadvertently, cutting down the Amazon to deliver this clean hydrogen or whatever it might be. However, sometimes we do have to get comfortable with the fact that the technology, if we're investing in technologies that we think are going to fundamentally change the way that we feed ourselves, for example, that's going to have a huge impact on a lot of the world, and the way that people earn their money and feed their families. So if we're investing in a, say, cultivated meat company, like what is that going to mean for the however many billion people in the world it is that are smallholder farmers, and what is it going to mean for people on lower incomes, and what is it going to mean, for people who are just trying to feed their families. So, and sometimes it's going to be, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty around that because we can't know the future perfectly, but we can just say, right, we think this is going to be better than what we're doing at the moment, and we're doing what we can to identify and neutralize those negative impacts.
So I really like this whole holistic approach that you take for the investment. So how long does it take to from the first pitch to the investment decision, with all of this work in between?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's our biggest learning with this fund, is that every deal has taken longer than we thought it was going to. So I think coming from angel investing and pre-COVID, things just moved a lot faster, and you could be a bit more like, yes, I'm investing in this company, and didn't have to write up a big old due diligence report and make sure that we really could be held to scrutiny for our decisions. So for sure, it's more work, but just the deals have been slower, and I don't know whether that's more the European pace of life or the effects of COVID, possibly a bit of both, but definitely, it's gone from, I think, in theory we could do it in a month, but in practice, I think the fastest has been probably more like 3 months. So, we've set ourselves up to try and be really nimble because it's really just the two of us making the decisions. But, we still have a level of research that we need to do to be comfortable with the decision, and then write it up and go through the process with our fund manager. But in practice, it's never been the limiting function. Our due diligence. It's normally been getting other investors over the line, and then wrangling the legal stuff, and then negotiations, and just everything going on, and then HMRC with their advanced assurance, and all of that good stuff. So
But thank you for sharing all of those interesting insights. So I have a more like an opinion question. I'd like to hear a little bit more your opinion regarding the I would say the place that women, the role that women can play into the climatic ecosystem and in the fight against climate change. I mean, we see the parity, even it sounds that in climate tech in a way we are more than 35%, but in the tech ecosystem in general, we are more around like 25%. So how do you think that could change, and what is blocking this, opportunity to have more like incredible women like you into the field?
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, look, we think diversity of all kinds is important, and it's a problem if VCs are a bunch of old white guys sitting around a table making a decision. There's a problem on so many levels. So we're really happy to be a woman-led VC, and the part of the reason I do a lot of try and do a lot of these panels and podcasts and whatever is to raise the profile to hopefully kind of inspire or be a role model to people who come from different backgrounds. So I'd worked in financial services before, but I wasn't a VC, and I want to demystify it and say, right, especially I think early stage investing, yes, you need to have the right skills, yes, they can be learned. You don't have to have that VC background to become a VC, and especially to try and encourage more women to become angel investors, because I think a lot of women have the skills, are bringing something different to the table, different insight, a different experience. They have access to capital, and they would make fantastic angel investors, and I think often just haven't had that idea, or don't have the confidence to go into that room, which is going to be mostly male and older, or perhaps, or and have a voice in that room and be asking different questions. But we think it's critical that happens, because, like I said, diversity of all kinds will bring different questions to the table, and bring evaluate the risk from different perspectives and make better decisions. And so companies who aren't doing that are leaving investment performance alpha on the table. So I really love that there are so many companies out there now who are working hard to make sure they have different voices on their investment team, and we definitely see that there's so many more women investors in clean tech, and investors from different backgrounds, and we've heard from entrepreneurs how important it is that they're facing people who are coming at it with a different energy. So we just want to keep on supporting women to become angel investors, to become fund managers, and to get into the space, and then to talk about their experiences and hopefully demystify some of the process. We where we don't see that happening, one of the areas is in startup CEOs, where we see a shocking lack of diversity coming through when we go to any pitch day. When we look at any pitch deck we get sent, it is I'm going to say about 80% male, and in terms of the CEOs, probably more like 90%. So we're trying to address that. I have a side project with two other awesome women clean tech investors called 513. So we're trying to bring gender equality, SDG 5, to climate action, SDG 13. And so we circulate a newsletter once a month with female-led startups in it. To clean tech investors, and it's a small thing that we can try and do, but hopefully just bring a bit more visibility to those companies. So we'd love to see more companies kind of leaning into that and having that intent of, like, how do I get more women into my funnel? How do I get more diverse founders, I should say, into the funnel? How do I make sure I'm evaluating them fairly and equally? And how do I make sure that I end up with them in my portfolio or in my investing team on both sides?
Thank you so much. It sounds like it's an incredible movement that you are launching and contributing to the more equality, gender equality into the ecosystem. Super exciting to see that. So regarding let's go back for my last question here. Like the climate crisis in itself, what is your personal view on it? Are we doomed? As I always like to ask. I mean, what would you say to people who feel demoralized by all the terrible news and already visible consequences of climate change?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty depressing for sure, and it's looking very bleak. Honestly, what gives me hope is seeing like the mechanisms of the market swinging into action. So it's great when you have inspirational people like Greta Thunberg and David Attenborough and people like that who inspire everyone, and they inspire me. But the actual like proper heroes of this movement to me are people like Mark Carney, who are like going out there and fighting for and getting implemented things like the Task Force for Climate Related Financial Disclosures, always get that in the wrong order, and is now fighting for the biodiversity version of that, and getting it in there, making the UK say that they're going to require that for all companies, and getting those kind of standards in place, because if all companies are scrutinizing their carbon emissions, that will lead to a change of behavior. We need consumers to act, of course, but we also need to make it easy for them to choose the right thing. And if every choice on the supermarket shelf or in whatever shop is a better choice, it's a virtuous cycle. So I think that's kind of movement is fantastic. So all of the activist shareholders who are holding companies like Exxon accountable by voting in people onto their board, I mean, it's just amazing stuff. And that there are companies, there are investors out there like BlackRock who are supporting that and writing their letters to investors. It's incredible. All of that is driving up the cost of capital to do anything relating to fossil fuels. It's making it almost impossible to get insurance. And those are the mechanisms by which change will happen. Is through money. Cynically, that's how it is. And then we see all the companies talking about what they're doing and how important it is, because they realise that's how they're going to attract and retain talent, especially with younger generations. Like, they're not going to go and work for a company that's doing bad stuff. Especially if they're saying that they're actually doing good stuff, but really they're still doing bad stuff. So it's really important. All of these different signals, all of these different choices are important. But what really gives me the hope is that the money is shifting.
Thank you so much. So how can the community of investors, founders, experts around the world that are listening to the show can help you and Zero Carbon Capital today? What's your ask?
Oh, well, yeah. So if I ask, we're currently putting together our second fund, and we're looking forward to kind of bringing a bigger focus to what we're doing. So we're going to be investing across Europe now, and up to this point, we've focused on developing our networks and relationships in the UK. So I guess that's our ask is to anybody out there who's spotting some of these awesome entrepreneurs that you think could be a fit for us across Europe or in the UK, please just let us know. So we have an open submission process, so we're trying to remove network bias. So anybody can go to our website and fill in our entrepreneur form and let us know about their company, and we promise to respond to you. And just let us know about the great founders out there who are doing creating inspiring technologies.
Thank you. So any question I should have asked you and I did not for this part of the interview?
We talked a little bit about greenwashing and what can we do. And I think, I'll go back to, Al Gore's second book and film, which is about speaking truth to power. So I think that's a big part of something that everybody can do. Is just like to call out that BS when we see it and say, right, it's not okay for our Prime Minister to go to COP26 and say, oh, I don't really want that coal mine to happen, but, it's not my decision. I can't do anything about it. That's not okay. It is not okay for the biggest banks in the world to say, oh yes, we're acting on climate change, but they still have the majority of their assets invested in fossil fuel companies or companies that aren't scrutinizing their carbon emissions. So I think we all need to stand up to the people who are in any seat of power and hold them accountable for when they're saying things which are contradictory to their stated goals of acting on climate change, because without calling that kind of behavior out, we won't see the change.
Thank you. I think we all need to go to vote when we have the opportunity for it. That's for sure. And we can vote with our wallet as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really the biggest individual thing that anybody can do is like move your pension if you have one, or your bank account if you don't, and change who you vote for. Make sure that's part of your decision.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pippa, for your time and your incredible insights on the industry. I'm so excited to see, so many brilliant women and people like you putting so much effort to move the ball towards a better and cleaner world. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on today, Gail.
Hi, it's Guillaume again. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. As I said, do not hesitate to share an episode with a friend. Also, if you value the work we do for the climate tech ecosystem, here is how you can contribute to it. Today, I'm asking for your support and a donation or sponsorship to make the work of our self-funded team more viable. Even a small contribution means a lot to us. In any case, I will invite you to subscribe to our channels and visit our website startupbasecamp.org to discover more episodes like this one, and get your membership to access all our members' exclusive content. So remember, all of this is possible because of your support and donation, and we want you to be part of this collective movement against climate change. Let's keep in touch, and I hope you will enjoy our next show with us.